Hey everyone, Yanshil here from Offline. Have you ever thought about starting a side project to change your career, to make more money, to start your own business, or to do anything fun? I used to think that having a side hustle is such a waste of my time and effort, and it's a lot more rewarding to focus on my own full-time job. However, after starting my own project, Upfly, I was able to learn a lot about the various aspects of business and see the big picture of it. So I was thinking if I started earlier while working for big companies, I could have actually learned a lot more by now. So today I invited the ambassador of Side Project, Ryan, to talk about why you should consider starting a side project and how you can start. Ryan is currently working for Close.io, one of the fast-growing B2B startups in the US, as a content marketing consultant. On the side, he's running his website, ryerob.com, to teach people how to start and grow a side business. He also writes about this subject matter for Forbes, Entrepreneur, Fast Company, Business Insider, and so on. So you might want to check out how he used his side project to make more money, build personal brand, and make a career leap. Are you ready? Let's get started. Thank you, Ryan, for joining us Offline here. I'm so excited to see you finally. So I discovered your super informative and resourceful website. I could notice that you poured a lot of time, effort, and of course money, right? Could you tell us why you started this kind of personal website and to do what?
Yeah. I mean, I'll be totally honest with you. When I first got my blog started, it had no agenda whatsoever. I wanted to just start sharing stories of my own. So back when I was in college, I invented this product called the iStash, an iPhone lookalike stash device. And long story short, I ended up selling 7,000 of these little iStashes. But at the end of the day, it ended up being a financial failure. Throughout the course of doing this iStash business, all of my friends in college were also sort of, pinging me with questions like, oh, how'd you find a factory in China to make this? How'd you get a distributor in Europe? All these little questions I was fielding from other people interested in business. And so that's really what my blog started as, was kind of just sharing my biggest failures, biggest lessons learned, stories, and things of that nature. And then it kind of just took on a life of its own over the course of a couple of years after that. I would say it took a couple of years to really build traction.
So actually you're talking about side hustle, but your first intention was not actually to make money. So you just wanted to share what you learned and what you experienced with a lot of people. That's interesting.
Yeah. And I think that that's actually a really interesting lesson. A lot of the people that I know who are really successful with blogging, it seems like people's first blog, or at least the way that they start, tends to genuinely be about sharing stories or helping people, sort of devoid of a money-making opportunity. And it's not to say that you can't immediately start a blog with the intention of making money with it. I think that that's very feasible to do. But when you're in it for some greater purpose beyond just turning a quick profit, I think there's a lot to be said for the way that you'll build your community, the types of people you'll connect with, and then going on down from there, how easy it'll be to actually write the content. If you're genuinely interested, if you're pulling from your own experiences, then that's completely different than trying to go out and learn about finance in order to start a blog about finance.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, that's important, but a lot of people might want to know about what could actually be beneficial for you at the end of the day.
What I've gotten as the biggest benefit from starting my blog has been the relationships I've made from it. So this job that I have at Close.io was because of my blog. I interviewed the founder, Steli FD, for my podcast. And that built a relationship, and it eventually led to me doing $5,000 to $10,000 a month in freelance work for them over the course of about a year and a half. And then eventually he just pitched me on hey, you're doing so much work for us. Do you want to join full time? And we're on the same page too about me having a couple of extra freelance clients and me keeping my blog going, the podcast. And so it's been this sort of, snowball effect of now that I've interviewed 70 or so people for my podcast, like these are all people who are willing to help me out with future projects. And, at the same time, I keep providing value to them, and I'll mention them in my blog and on,
Right.
different publications I write for when I do guest posts. And so it's sort of this big, like virtuous cycle that I view it as decades long, as
Right.
this game is decades long. So I'm not looking to, cash out big time this year or next year. Like I'm keeping my eyes very open and options open to seeing where my blog takes me over the coming years.
Awesome. Yeah. Oh, definitely. So speaking of the freelancing, and a lot of people came to my website to learn about, how to develop their career overseas in the long term.
Yeah.
So one of my advice for them was like, we have to open to more various form of employments, like such as a freelancing or remote employee or like contractor, etc. Right? So I know you've worked as a freelancer for a long time, and could you tell us, how you started and why you stayed with that freelancing for a long time?
Yeah, definitely. My first freelance client actually came to me because of my blog. Once I started actually taking my blog seriously and writing, weekly or biweekly content, I started to get a lot more inquiries from brands and people that worked at these brands that, wanted content like what I was creating on my blog to be published on their site as well. And so that's kind of, my blog was the seed that eventually grew my freelance business. But attacking it from a different angle, I did have some experience working on the marketplace sites, the Upworks, the Fivers, and I think that those can be okay starting points to get like portfolio examples to kind of just like get to know a few different types of clients, learn the kinds of clients that you do and do not want to work with in the future. I think those marketplaces are great for that. Because a lot of the clients you won't want to work with more in the future. But then, I always advise freelancers to, as soon as they possibly can, move off of the marketplace sites and then identify the types of companies you want to work for and then start reaching out to people at those companies. And the way that I kind of break this down, I have a crazy long guide on this. It's called,
I know
I
what you're
think it's
talking
called My
about.
Ultimate Guide to Cold Emails.
Yeah, I will just like leave that your blog post on the below, so you guys need to check out like that. Like the post is amazing because like it's all about pitch your idea to the people that you're targeting. So I really enjoy the post as well.
I'm a big fan of investing a lot of time in the pitch and not just email blasting 50 people all at once. Like really do the research and try and build a relationship. I'll like to try and, feature these brands on my blog first before I reach out. That way it's me kind of reaching out to say, hey, I did this cool thing for you. And then after that, I'll follow up with the kind of lead into like, oh, would you also be interested in some paid work that's going to be similar to what you just saw on my blog?
Awesome. Yeah, actually I did like both sides as well. Like when I started like sending a cold email, I didn't know how to send. So like I just like created one template. I just shoot out to everyone. Of course, like their response rate is terrible, right? So
well, I think everyone has to start with that to learn that that's not the way to do it.
Talking about the side project. So like some of the people might feel like investing in something on the side is actually not really rewarding. I can relate a little bit because I used to think like that, like investing 100% of myself like into like my main job is actually more rewarding. That's what I thought like a long time ago. And then could you share about your perspective and why you think that, having a side hustle or a side project is important for certain people?
I'm a big fan of the side hustle. Obviously, that's the topic of my podcast, the blog, everything. So I'm, my opinion might be a little skewed in that direction, but I think that my biggest justification, reason why I'm a huge fan of the side hustle is that it's your own form of job security, right? So, today the employment market's not the same. My parents had the same job for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Like, they had basically one career their entire lives, but I'm 28 years old and I've already had like 5 different jobs over the course of, just 7 or 8 years in the workforce. And so I think that the best thing about having a side hustle and something that's dependable, reliable, is that it's giving you security, so that if
Uh-huh.
if you lose your job or the economy shit hits the fan, like there's no way to predict how the future is going to go. But
Right.
if you have, your personal brand where you can go out and somewhat easily book freelance gigs because of your personal brand, or,
Mm-hmm.
you have a blog that's making money, you sell courses, you have a podcast, like there's so many different ways that you can build up a little platform of security for yourself. And I think that
Uh-huh.
that's like by far the best reason to invest in having a side hustle, aside from, if it's just an outlet that's fun for you.
But a lot of people think that like, okay, now I get it. Like I want to just like do a side project, but I don't know where to start, right? So like they say, oh, like I don't have any idea. Like I don't know like what to say. I don't have anything really special. Like what's your advice for those people?
I think that you always have to start with your own personal interests. And
Mhm.
passion, I don't really like as a word. That kind of like implies that you have to be like super in love with something.
Mhm.
So I like to use the word interest. So
Mhm.
something that you're interested in, a hobby, something
Mhm.
that you're good at. Like, what were you good at in school? What
Mhm.
is something that people come to you asking for advice about? Like, these are the kinds of questions that I try and encourage people to answer first before
Mhm.
they start a side hustle, if they're looking for the right kind of idea, because
Mhm.
you can go out and chase like any market opportunity, and
Mhm.
some people will be good and successful at just chasing random opportunities that
Mhm.
they know nothing about personally. That works
I actually
sometimes,
have that kind
but
of experience as well. Like my
it's
first
not
item was
predictable.
like something that I actually not really interested in at first. So I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
maybe it's gonna be a good opportunity. Like maybe I can just make money out of it. That's how I felt. So I started, and then it's not good because you don't know anything about that market, and you don't actually
Yeah.
you can't just keep going because you don't have any interest in those kind of subject matter, right?
I've
So
done
I
it too.
you've done it as
That
well.
was my first product, the eye stash. Like I wasn't even within my own target market. I was making a product for people that I didn't really understand, and
Mhm.
that's a huge lesson for me, has been that
Mhm.
now I'm never ever ever going to get into a business that
Mhm.
I don't feel like I'm in the target market for myself. So,
Exactly.
I'll make a product one day for content marketers, I'll do stuff for writers, like it has to be for people that I deeply understand,
Mhm.
and something that I'm personally interested in. So I always look at, the types of problems that I'm
Mhm.
having when I'm looking at potential businesses to get myself into. And I think another sort of caveat to add here is that you should never assume that the idea you have is going to be perfect as is. You have to
Right.
get feedback from people immediately, start
Mhm.
having conversations with the right people, and make sure that it's a problem other people really have. Because
Yeah.
you can invest a ton of time and money in solving a problem for yourself.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, if that solution works, that's great for you. But if no one else has that problem, it's not a business. It's just a
Right.
solution for yourself. So
Right.
that's what I would say, is to really like dig into the right problem that you're personally interested in, and you truly understand, and just start involving people in conversations from day one before you go out and like start building something.
So this is going to be my last question. And a lot of people feel like a little bit afraid because if they step into the freelancing and it's harder for them to come back to the corporate world. Then based on your experience, do you agree with this, or, what's your opinion?
Well, based on my experience, I don't agree. I can understand why some people would think that way, but I think at the end of the day, like, you're going to be judged on your merits and your experience with the right kinds of companies, I'll say.
Mhm.
So it doesn't really matter if you take a detour and you go spend a year or 2 years, 3 years, 5 years out freelancing. And I would actually argue that if you go and spend some time doing freelance work full time, that you're going to work with more companies and build up a better portfolio and look like more of an expert in your
Mhm.
industry if you're able to work with, say, 5 to 10 companies
Mhm.
when you're out freelancing for a couple of years. And
Mhm.
I, personally, I was able to enter back into working full time with Close.io at a much higher, like, salary range and like seniority range
Right.
than when I originally left the workforce to freelance
Mhm.
just a few years ago. So for me, it was actually a career leap by
Mhm.
going out and freelancing, and sort of like that was able to build my personal brand so much more than I
Mhm.
previously had, because then I was featured on all these other companies' blogs, and I had all these testimonials from people that I worked with. And at the end of the day, it did nothing but help me.
So it was a really good motivational session for me as well. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. And I do want to say, I am super accessible. If you have any questions related to freelancing, if you want me to bounce ideas off of, I'm very easy to reach. I'm just Ryan at ryrob.com. So thank you guys.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
업플라이 TV의 각 에피소드는 저의 인사이트와 함께 업플라이 웹사이트의 무료 자료 섹션에서 찾아보실 수 있어요. 에피소드에 대한 질문이나 업플라이 멤버분들과 공유하고 싶은 것이 있다면 댓글을 통해 남겨주시기 바랄게요. 업플라이의 다양한 무료 자료와 멤버분들께만 공유하는 정보를 받아보시려면 뉴스레터 구독란을 통해 이메일 주소를 남겨주세요. 웹사이트와 유튜브에서는 공개하지 않을 해외 취업 전략 이메일 시리즈를 보내드리도록 하겠습니다.